Hello and welcome to Vision 2020, the show that gives you detailed insight into all matters political, social, or economic, giving it a historical, data-driven, and biblical view of how to sort through the mess and rubble to find the truth. Now, this week, we're talking about that word. You know that word, Maandamano. That's what we're talking about. Now, what is Maandamano? Maandamano in English is demonstration. It is a constitutional right enshrined in the Constitution of Kenya. It is not just a Kenyan thing. In fact, in recent days in France, we've seen so many demonstrations about an issue for us Africans we would find very trivial. Yes, the retirement age was moved from 62 years to 64, and the French public collectively lost their minds. And we've seen demonstrations all over the streets of Paris and across France. Now, the French are particularly known for having demonstrations. In fact, if you know the phrase, let them eat cake if they lack bread, then you know this is a statement from Marie Antoinette, Queen of France, many years ago when the French Revolution was afoot. So the French are known to have demonstrated and continue to demonstrate to this day whenever the government does anything they do not like. Now, Kenya, for a long time, was no different. If you were alive in the 1990s, you would remember the famous Saba demonstrations that brought about the second liberation of our country, upon which Section 2A was removed from our constitution and multi-party democracy was brought to the fore. Demonstrations have been demonstrated, pun intended, for years upon years that they're effective tools for bringing attention to issues that the public deems the government has ignored and they feel they need to be heard. Now, the question then there is that does Kenya have issues that the people feel they have not been heard about? The people. Not the politicians. Let's not bring Raila, Uhuru, Ruto, Kalonzo, Martha Karua, and Rigiji into this. Not yet, not yet. Let's talk about the people. Where are they? What are they feeling? Now, if you are like me, and I'm sure you are, and you eat food and you go to the supermarket to find food items, or you go to your local market, you will have realized that the price of things has increased significantly. What 1,000 shillings used to get you is not the same thing you can get now. The basket is dwindling. Now, if the basket is dwindling, whose fault is it? Now, truth be told, the commodity prices across the world have gone up. Whether it is disruption because of COVID-2020, the continued lockdown of China past 2020 and 2021, or the war between the Russians and the Ukrainians, which created higher demand from different oil producers and gas producers to supply Europe, which had sanctioned Russia, or whether it is the fact that Russia has blockaded the export of wheat and various grains from Ukraine, which is the fourth largest producer of these grains. Yes, the truth is the cost of commodities is a worldwide problem. But does that exonerate the government of the day from the responsibility of making sure that the prices are affordable for Kenyans? Absolutely not. Governments exist to solve problems for the people. That's why they exist. If there is a flood, you expect government to sort it out. If there is an earthquake, God forbid, you expect government to sort it out. So Kenyans are not wrong to look to the government and say, government, we expect you to sort out our high food and life expense prices. It is not wrong. It is the expectation of any citizen that his government will continually make his existence comfortable in that country. Indeed, if there was bad air, polluted air blowing in from Tanzania, Kenyans have the right to complain and say that the government of Kenya needs to do something about bad air coming from Tanzania. So that is a right Kenyans have. The second issue is, do Kenyans have the right to demonstrate without a reason? Interesting question. The truth is, yes, they do. The Constitution does not put a limit upon which people may demonstrate. You can wake up tomorrow and demonstrate and say you do not like how the sky is blue. And because of freedom of expression and freedom of speech, we cannot stop you. You are allowed. You can swing and sing like a little Tweety bird all day long and say how much you do not like that the sky is blue. Whether we will do something about it or not is the question. Now, on the other side of that argument, there are people who argue, and correctly so, that violence and demonstrations in this country are married together. Indeed, even in the example I gave you, during the Saba rallies, we saw people being tear gassed, we saw live bullets being used, we saw shops being broken into. Now, the question is no longer whether demonstrations are allowed. The question moves to the acts of violence in demonstrations. Whose responsibility is it? Now, one side of the debate has said that it is the government that is being overhanded with water cannons and tear gas, and that is what is causing chaos on the demonstrations. The other side will quickly tell you that no, it is not us, it is not our demonstrations, it is not the police at all. It is hooliganism. It is people within the crowd who want to fight and cause chaos and to break people's shops. In fact, these are not demonstrations, they're acts of terror. Now, the funny thing is, they're both right. In any crowd, whether you put them together for a concert or for a demonstration, there are always rogue elements that want to pickpocket people, rob people, and we've seen that happen where large groups of people meet. Then there is always criminal elements. At the same time, you cannot say that the use of live bullets upon demonstrators is a justifiable action against demonstrators. It is not. Therefore, no one in this particular argument is innocent. You will not be remiss if you took a side and said, oh, I'm totally on the side of the demonstrators, or I'm totally on the side of the police. None of them are correct. And therefore, the question remains, what is the solution? We've identified there's a problem. Whenever we demonstrate in Kenya, things go wrong. So what is the solution? What should we see happen? Well, our Constitution. Our Constitution envisions certain responsibilities to be held by certain people. The state, the government, has a responsibility to protect lives and property. Now, here's the thing about protecting lives and property. Did you know that in the act of executing police duties, using excessive force is wrong? Did you know that a thief is required to be arrested by the police in the gentlest way possible, not in the roughest way possible? Now, I know that goes counter to the Kenyan culture because we like to see thieves suffer, but no, that's not how policing works. That's why we moved from a police force to a police service. Now, the people in charge of ensuring there is peaceful demonstrations, interestingly enough, is the police. The police are required to protect both protester and the person viewing the protest and the person receiving the petition from the protesters. That is a philosophy that must change in our minds. We must begin to realize that the person you disagree with must not be violated simply because we disagree with them. But that in no way absolves the people who are holding the protests. Now let me speak to the protest holders. The protest holders have a responsibility, and the responsibility is simple. That you must verbally discourage violence. Within your members, within your rank and file, you must make sure that you create an environment where you weed out criminal elements and shun violence. Mahatma Gandhi taught us that non-violent means can actually deliver not only the message of demonstrations, but also kick out the colonialists. It is possible to have peaceful demonstrations. Martin Luther King did the same. You have a responsibility to ensure that the people demonstrating in your demonstration, in your protest, are peaceful. So you too are held liable. If people go overboard, you cannot stand by and aid and abet when people are demonstrating. So at the end of the day, Kenya needs to come to a point that one, we must, as a government, protect and uphold the right of people to protest and demonstrate against us, even if we feel the protests and the demonstrations are trivial or unfair. They have a right to do so. They have a right to free speech, have a right to picket and to peacefully demonstrate. At the same time, that right stops the moment they infringe on the peace of other people. That's how it is. Now, I've talked about the legalese. I've talked about the reasons why people protest. Now let's go to the core of the issue. Maandamano 2023. What are they really about? Well, it's been said it's about opening the Saba. It's been said it's about the cost of living. It's been said about upholding constitutional norms. And number 4, fairness in the distribution of jobs and resources. Now, we find ourselves as a country in an interesting space. Interesting in the sense that there seems to be a carryover of the pain, the tribulations of the pre-election period. People are carrying a trauma. One side is carrying a trauma where they feel the elections were not fair. Others are carrying a trauma and blaming the previous regime for not only mistreating them, but also for landing the country in jeopardy. Now the question we must ask ourselves is, who is wrong and who is right? Unfortunately, they are both right and therefore they are both wrong. Hold on. Before you get all emotional and right to me, hold on. They are right in the sense that Kenya's economy is struggling. We have high debt, we have high cost of living, we have high electricity costs. It is hard. For the first time in our history, in living memory, we saw salaries delayed. So yes, there is an issue there. There is an issue that the previous regime, they feel, did not act in a physical manner that they agree with. Now, the truth is, this is nothing new. If you look at the United States, How many times has the government gone to a shutdown because the Republicans and the Democrats could not agree on whether the debt ceiling should be increased or reduced? And what should happen? For example, most famously, Trump wanted to build his wall. The Democrats did not want to give him a dime to build the wall. Were they right? Were they wrong? Well, no. Trump wanted to stop illegal immigration. It is a big issue in the Americas. And guess what? The Democrats, including President Obama, were shipped out tens of thousands of immigrants out of the United States. They both deal with the same issues. They just do not agree on the methodology. And therein lies my statement. They're both right and they're both wrong. How are they both wrong? They're both wrong because in a democracy, you need to allow for a multiplicity of opinions, multiplicity of direction, and multiplicity of accepting that you can agree to disagree. There is no monopoly in truth. There is no one who owns the truth. So what should happen? What should happen is they should both get off their high horses, yes, I said it, and stop playing with the instruments of power and influence to push Kenyans to a situation where they're not comfortable. Instead, the reason why Parliament has a majority side and a minority side is not that the majority or the minority should bully the other. It is that we should get to a point where the opinions, the reasonings, and the thoughts of the minority are considered just as much as the thoughts of the majority. When that fails, then what usually happens is the people will begin to speak. And when they speak, it doesn't matter whether you are on the left or on the right. You will have to listen to the people. So listen. When the government, the leadership, and I'm differentiating between government and leadership because they're leaders who are not in government, become insensitive to the people and they tell them to eat cake instead of bread, then what happens is the country begins to pull apart. And that is what we need to watch out for. That it should not be a power struggle. So the question that we've got to ask ourselves is, what does the Bible say? What is the issue? Number one, speak peaceably. Speak peace. What does that mean? Speak peace is not when we go to our rooms and you pray for peace in our country. No. Speaking peace is when someone speaks to you an opinion you disagree with and you respond peaceably. That's what we need to do. We are a country that is often divided by difficult political decisions. We need to learn to speak to each other peaceably. When people say that the price of unga is too high, don't fight them. Speak to them peaceably. When people say that Maandamano is bad, don't spit in their faces and say that it is right. Instead, speak to them peaceably. Let us learn the language of peace. Let us learn the language of bringing together instead of tearing and pulling apart. There is venom in our tongues in this country. There is venom. We have poison in our tongues. And every time you read a social media post about politics, you see that venom, that anger, that brutality. Let's remove it. The person on the other side is not your enemy. In fact, when you go buy bread, it is the same price for both of you. Mark you, there is no Azimio bread, there is no Kenya Kwanza bread, there is only bread. There is no Azimio unga and Kenya Kwanza unga, there is only unga. There is no electricity supplied specially for Azimio people and for UDA people. No. That person is not your enemy. Let's stop making enemies of each other. Secondly, The Bible says we are called to the ministry of reconciliation. The ministry, my friends, of putting together. The ministry of bringing together. How many times do we want to bring people together? I know in this country, coming together to talk is considered the worst thing that could happen. No, it's not. We need to pull together as a country. We are too poor to fight. We can't afford it. We are too poor to spend 2 days in a week arguing. Too poor. What we do need to do, though, is to sit down and reconcile. Remember what Jesus said, that if you're about to give your sacrifice at the altar, because nowadays we are a very prayerful nation, so that's a good thing. It says when you're at the altar, you're about to give your sacrifice, and you remember that you have an issue with your brother. It says, leave your sacrifice. Go and be reconciled with your brother. The ministry of reconciliation. Instead of clergy running for jobs, running for opportunities, you have an opportunity. You have an opportunity to be a clergyman. Now use that opportunity to bring together. And I'm not talking about bringing together two leaders. No. I'm talking about bringing Kenyans together. Let us begin to agree that we need to sort out the price of unga. We need to sort out the price of electricity. Let us come together and shed off the shackles of poverty together. Let us come together. So number one, speak peaceably. Number two, reconcile. But there's number three. Number three is something I like about our God. He says, come, let us reason together. Let's reason together. Let's think together. Let's solve problems together. That is the ultimate cure for this Maandamano. It is not us versus them. We've got one country. But we've got to think together. Let's stop feeling angry and hatred so we cannot think. Remove all those feelings. Remove the root of bitterness so you can think and reason. And when you can think and reason, see what the other person is going through. See what is their pain. See what is their history. But God did not stop at saying, come, let us reason together. No. That's not where he stopped. He continued to say, though your sins be red as scarlet, he will make them white as snow. Now, you are thinking that, what? That's God. I'm not God. True. You're not God. But you're also called to forgive. You're also called to let go. The Lord's Prayer is clear. Forgive us our trespass as we forgive those who trespass against us. So have you forgiven? That's why you can't reason. Unforgiveness makes you an unthinking person. And that's what we are. We are a nation where the Kikuyu has never forgiven the Luo has never forgiven the Kikuyu, and the Kalenjin and and that's who we are. We need a white as snow country where the blood has been removed. The blood of pain, the blood of betrayal, the blood of a history of letting each other down. The only way we can reason together is if we choose to forgive each other. The pain that this country has gone through requires forgiveness. It requires restitution. It requires putting back what has been taken away. Then, and only then, can we reason together. As I conclude, we are a nation that prays before every meeting. So let's turn what we know into action. Let our lives reflect our prayer. When we pray for peace, be that peace. When you pray for reconciliation, be that reconciliation. When you pray for reasoning, be that reasoning. But remember, all this is impossible if we don't forgive. And that's why you need to remember, it says to remove the root of bitterness. If you don't remove the root of bitterness, then I'm telling you, you cannot see clearly. You will not have Vision 2020. That was our show. See you guys next week on Vision 2020.